Okay, so look, it's entirely plausible that you have never ever heard of Fugget About It, and have clicked on this video out of a pure sense of curiosity and bafflement about this piece of media that might have passed you by. And you know what? Kinda completely fair on that front, because I can't imagine many people know this predominantly Canadian TV show that did admittedly air on Hulu TV for its first 2 seasons, and on Adult Swim for its 3rd season, but so it's not like, completely an underground hidden gem. But this was 10 years ago, and it never made it past that 3rd season, or even onto Netflix for a revival or something. So it's probably up there with the IT crowd for rarity, and, the amount of people that know it are people who, maybe saw it back when it aired and haven't heard about it in 10 years.
Forget about it. Forget about it. Forget about it. Oh, forget about it.
So a question you might be asking is, what is this all about? And, well, it's the story of a New York mafioso who is relocated to a rural town in Canada due to some mishaps that occurred with a crime boss back home that required them to go into witness protection to keep their family safe. It's like if The Sopranos met Letterkenny, but we wouldn't be talking about Forget About It if it didn't have a trans episode, right? I mean, that's the title of the darn video. There better bloody well be one, or what is the point of this channel? And yes, have no fear, it does have a trans-centric narrative at some point that I'm going to discuss with you. But do have fear, because, well, this is a cartoon show from the mid-2010s, and we've had a pretty terrible track record with those so far on this channel, with only a few managing to really lift themselves out of the swampy mire of transphobia, stereotypes, and fetishization. Hard to say that sounds like Sean Connery. So, with a little bit of trepidation, let's figure out whether we should actually be remembering this show for having a positive trans episode, or whether we should forget about it and relegate it to the grave that I've dug it out of to watch it with you. The episode in question is that of the Broadfather, a funny little pun on, well, inserting the term broad into the word Godfather. Look, it's about a New York Italian-American mafia family. Of course, they use all the references they can make to that heritage and the associated media with it. The Broadfather is Season 2's Episode 4, airing in September 2013, right after I just left high school and before I worked out, well, pretty much everything about myself. So doesn't that make me feel old as fuck? The episode begins with the main character, Jimmy Falcone, which... hang on. Is that a reference to the Falcone family from Batman? Or is Falcone/Falcone just a common Italian-American surname? And... no, I'm not going to do the research to figure that out because... A, I don't care. B, there is not enough information on this show anywhere online for me to probably find that out. This is a very forgotten show. It's hard to find anything. But it begins with Jimmy straight up just telling us the backstory of the show, which is actually quite nice, because the older that I get, the harder I find it to retain information and keep up with what's happening in the shows I watch.
How you doing? I'm Jimmy McDougal. Used to be Jimmy Falcone. I may be living like a jerk in witness protection, but back in the day, I was a made guy.
And during this little intro spiel, it makes it very clear how assaulted the senses are going to be with the most New Yorkness of all time. And I also clocked the Don's wife being a rather buff lady with 5 o'clock shadow and body hair. Now, I don't know what's coming, and I don't know for a fact if this is going to be any reference to any transness at all, or if this is just a joke about the hairiness of Italian genetics for women. But the fear that I mentioned earlier about this cartoon show doing poorly is rising slightly. It could still recover and could still be fantastic, but my hesitation is increasing, and the anxiety is going up. So it needs to do some work to pull me back again. But the show continues, and we immediately get introduced to some classic cartoon family dynamics. A clueless father figure in Jimmy, an exasperated wife in Cookie, a funny guy in Uncle Cheech.
Oh, right, you got your hair done. Looks good.
No, I didn't, you moron. You got no idea what I'm talking about, do you? Have a nice freaking day at the track. I hope a horse craps on you.
Me too.
It's all coming together. Once you understand your themes and your history of sitcoms, you do truly start to see the repetitions that make the genre tick. We also meet the daughter of the family and the son of the family, one of whom is a socially inept nerd who wants to talk to the ladies, and the other of whom is a girl. I just want to take a brief second away from all of this to talk about the Fugget About It wiki, which is of course incredibly poorly managed because who the hell is keeping a dead show from 2014's wiki alive? But I have to say something about it due to the fact that in the categories section when I clicked on it, it has only one content page aside from the base ones of recently changed and general organisation, which is males. The only category on the wiki that I can see is males. I don't want that to reflect at all on Fugget About It as a show, but if I didn't bring that up to somebody at some point, it would just build up inside of me until I don't know, broke down like a robot. What kind of system is this? Get a better wiki. If this video does well enough, could somebody please go and fix this wiki up? That's all I'm asking for here. But yeah, there seems to be a whole side plot here about the Falcone's son, whose name I won't remember, building a robot version of himself to charm women so that he can use what is kind of trickery to get in there. Which is, I mean, the politics of that narrative is worrying to say the least. Don't seduce women with a robot version of yourself that you then replace at the last minute. I just want to get that out there for the budding roboticists in my audience. It's creepy as fuck. And the Falcone daughter, whose name I can't remember learning, and I also will probably continue to not bother learning, is shown to be kind of a bimbo. And I guess that's the word that we would use for it back in the day. Like, she's physically attractive, but she's not really there mentally.
Petey, why are my Cosmo pages all stuck together? Whoa, what are you doing?
I realized what my biggest problem is when it comes to girls.
That you're a complete loser?
No, not that.
I mean, it's as stereotyped as you can physically get. But none of this is getting us closer to our fucking trans character, or our trans narrative, or the point of this whole bloody video. You didn't click on this to see me talk about these random, admittedly main characters. Like, all this is currently doing is it's making me more concerned. Because the basis of the show seems to be, so far, following pretty normalised trends of established character tropes and arcs. Which is exactly how the most transphobic stuff in Family Guy and Simpsons happened in the first place. But I still think the worry level is only at a 40%. The show has not been too egregious so far. The A-plot then progresses to the next step of Jimmy Falcone needing to do something nice for his wife's birthday that he forgot, and Uncle Cheech mentioning a dinner at an all-girls review, which is described as a classy version of a strip club. I looked it up and yeah, I'd sort of agree with that assessment. It's kind of got like comedy and news and commentary and a bit of skin. It's all theatrical. I mean, it's like a drag show or a YouTube channel. It sort of meets the bill. So they go to the review, which is a geriatric review to add to the comedy of it, I suppose.
It's correct to me! It's correct to you! It's correct to me! It's correct to you!
I mean, sometimes jokes just do not land with me, or I can like see the setup, but the punchline is lacking the punch and the line, which is kind of what's happening right here. But like, is that just me being someone who maybe has a slightly different way of working than other people? Am I just is this actually super funny and I'm just missing it? I don't know.
Especially that one song, Hot Flash Dance.
I like the number where they fell and couldn't get up. It really spoke to me.
But backstage at the geriatric review, they run into one of the performers who recognizes Jimmy. Oh no, they think. They've been made, and they might have to take some drastic steps to keep their identity hidden. But then, even more shock and surprise. it turns out that this older lady is in fact Jimmy Falcone's dead father. Now, initially, there is much disbelief from Jimmy and Cookie over this fact, because Jimmy's father was believed to be offed by another family, and that his dad was a man named Sal Falcone.
I hate to break it to you, Looney Tunes, but my father was a man. Not anymore, I ain't. Come here, kid.
But then this lady starts dropping a whole bunch of personal facts and pieces of information that make it pretty clear very fast that this woman is indeed Jimmy's parent and used to be his father. Cookie then asks the big question of the hour, which is whether this is a case of her being an actual broad or merely dressing up like one, which might seem like a crass question, but honestly, thank God for them attempting to make it clear to us, the audience, the distinguishment between this being a drag queen or a trans woman. Not many other shows care to draw that line for their cis audience. And we get the flashback scene detailing the relatively common trans experience of knowing deep down who you're supposed to be, but keeping it locked away due to gender expectations and family requirements, and in this case, the more extreme acknowledgement of the danger of being transgender in the Mafia environment, with the fact that she would get whacked if the mob ever found out, and it would see her family removed from the entire business. She then details how she ran away to avoid bringing that down on her family, making the hard choice to be who she is in a way that would also attempt to lessen the impact on her family, and changing her name to Sally Monero.
So I left to start a new life where I could finally, surgically, become a woman. Since then, I've been living as Sally Monero. That's quite a... I mean, what?
Now, this is a lot to take on immediately for the Falcone family, and if you've been keeping track so far, that is the 10th time that I've pronounced Falcone differently. I can't make up my mind whether it's Falcone or Falcone, and so I've been jumping between the two in a way that deliberately annoyed just you. Whoever got annoyed by that. I'm sorry, I'll try and settle on one, but I promise nothing. And it certainly isn't helped by the Canadian Mounties turning up to arrest his parent out of fear that she might ruin his witness protectioning. We then skip past all the B-plot stuff because I don't want to think about the nerd and his weird sex robot of himself that he made, and we discover that Sally Monero is totally safe and not a threat to the Falcones, and in fact that she is in more danger than Jimmy is, thanks to the hostility that the Mafia has towards transgender women, and the toxic masculinity that is upheld in the notion that somebody choosing to step away from the supposedly desirable position of maleness threatens the entire patriarchal concept that is rooted within their hierarchy. Okay, look. Fugget About It doesn't say that exactly. It says just this.
You merely broke a blood oath that you swore on your life to uphold. She turned into a lady. They hate that.
But I think that's the core message behind that statement, right? The Canadian Mountie guy then gives the advice to Jimmy Falcone to take this opportunity to reconnect with his father. Father being used in this sense in the more gender-neutral way, I guess, because the show is consistent in the fact that nobody goes out of their way to misgender Sally Monero, so the father aspect is not being used to circumvent that recognition of her gender. It's, I guess, more an acknowledgement of an established position that she held and that she herself uses for herself during the episode. Which is, honestly, not completely against what I've seen from IRL trans women after they come out. They still use terms like that with their family. And honestly, that's their prerogative to decide what they are comfortable with in regards to their own gender and their gender reference. The Mountie also mentions how their father was distant thanks to huffing paint and chasing Thai ladyboys, which is a term that has really fallen out of favour amongst every group except for douchebag cis men who find it hilarious still, I guess, and not very offensive at all, when it very clearly is a very offensive term. But then the Mountie leaves with his final statement of, for Canada, where it's not gay to be with a transgender.
For Canada, where it's not gay to be with a transgender!
And honestly, yeah, thanks for the reminder, 2013. I mean, I sure wish some people in the current year of our Lord 2023 would take that to heart. This isn't a great thing, but I mean, whatever. I guess this is part of that bit about Canada being a more progressive state than the USA. A bit that has lost its edge a little bit with the rise of people like Jordan Peterson, Stefan Molyneux and Lauren Southern. Oh, and also the continual repression of the Indigenous people by the police, including the very Mounties that we see here espousing the virtues of Canada. Sorry, I'm over here getting all political in this family cartoon. I always forget that comedy has no politics in it whatsoever, and exists in a microcosm, free from all that shit, so apologies to the viewers, I'll try and keep my political views out of this video. Ignore that. So we cut to Sally Monero, meeting the rest of the Falcone family, including her grandchildren who refer to her as Grandpama, which, yet again, if that's the terminology that she is okay with and that works for her, then ain't no skin off my facial features, who are asking her a series of questions about about the whole transgender deal.
Hey, Grandpa Sal, when you turned into a lady, did the operation hurt?
What operation, kid? I went into a cocoon.
Which is understandable, considering that they're kids and this is a pretty big change to the world as they might understand it. And also, a lot of trans people are not opposed to answering questions as long as they're polite and not offensive. And also, that if they do say no, that you don't keep pushing and asking for answers. It's all light-hearted and kind of fun, and it continues that theme of not making comedy at the expense of the trans woman, which is, and will always be, a big sticking point for me on the quality of the representation in a comedy. Especially after getting burnt so hard with The Family Guy, The Simpsons, IT Crowd, South Park, How I Met Your Mother, Friends, Futurama. God, I've been doing this for a while, huh? And Jimmy then turns up to see his father and freaks out and attempts to leave, to which Cookie drags him into the kitchen and we see the first misgendering by Jimmy and the first misgendering in the whole episode, kind of, which he quickly corrects himself on without anybody making him do it.
Ah! What the hell is she doing here?
Which is a good showcase of the attitude that a cis person should have in this case. Slip-ups can happen, especially if you've not trained your brain to automatically gender this person you might know with different pronouns correctly yet. But as long as you are aware of it and make the effort to respect them, it's a good step. And we find the crux of the issue here. Jimmy isn't mad at Sally because she is transgender, or because of what that represents. He is mad because she ran out and left her family. A perfectly understandable issue to have. And this is a great direction for the show to take with this, with having the transgender element be a side narrative to the major one, which is the abandonment issues that Jimmy feels from being, abandoned.
No! Jimmy, where you going? Don't run out! What, like you did to me?
What an asshole.
No matter how well justified that might seem from Sally's perspective. These tensions blow over into an argument with Jimmy's family about the way he is treating his parent, and how he's taking away this grandparent from his kids. To which we get that insight into his relation with his own father, with him saying that it's Sally's own business if she transitioned, but it's the uncertainty and fear of himself in relation to her leaving. Like, did he do something wrong? Did he screw up somehow? Oh, and also, in this whole revealing moment, Jimmy misgenders Sally at every possible turn with absolutely no correction from himself or from Cookie.
Are you gonna crap on everyone just because your father changed into a woman?
Nah, that's his freaking business. What am I gonna do, change him back?
So what are you pissed off about?
I'm pissed off because he left me! He never even said goodbye! Why? What did I do? Was there something wrong with me?
So I guess, not that great. Look, I get it. He's having an emotional moment, sure, but you gotta stay on top of it, you know. Or I'm gonna have to dock a few points from the trans representation tracker. I don't make the rules here. You screw up, you lose, you drop to a B+ from an A. that's actually like, I do make the rules here. Jimmy is clearly freaking out about his own connection to fatherhood, and we see this more in his overcompensation with his daughters, and attempting to try to prove to them that he will be there for them all the time and whenever they need it. A little bit, helicopter parenting, before it is made clear that he needs to resolve his own issues with his parent instead of this aggressive display of instability that is hurting his family members more than it's helping.
What the hell are you doing buying Gina a psychotic pony?
What? I'm just trying to be a good father.
You're already a good father, mostly. Stop trying to prove it before you kill someone. It's Sally you need to work things out with.
In this attempt to hash out this conversation with Sally, Jimmy accidentally gets himself stuck in a weed deal gone wrong, discovering that Sally sells drugs on the side because I guess she's cool as fuck. And they have the hard talk about the fact that Jimmy feels as if his father leaving him ruined his life and made it so much harder for him. While they're also pointing guns at some people who are trying to buy some weed and pointing guns back at them, with one of those guys who are trying to buy weed making this remark mid-discussion and getting shut down in such a deliciously confident way.
Wait a sec. This lady's your father?
Yeah, I used to be a man. Deal with it.
That's the kind of comment from a transgender woman I can get behind. I always like my trans characters to be very much on the train of, I am what I am, and it's everybody else's problem to work around that. Because that really speaks to me. The discussion continues with the outside interpretation by these two guys on the side about the whole arguments at play here, with them really diving into the whole nature of repression, and the way that such a thing will ultimately be more hurtful to the family dynamics in the long term.
You would have been a laughingstock.
See? What choice did she have?
Well, he could have suppressed his desire to be a woman and raised his son.
That would have made for a real healthy father-son relationship. You better forgive your dad, miss.
And Sally finally asks Jimmy to forgive her, which he immediately does because, I don't know, Jimmy's a pretty simple character who really doesn't complicate his own life by thinking too much.
Jimmy, can you ever forgive me? Yeah, after all, you was just looking out for me. I'm sorry I had to leave. Come here, you.
And they hug it out in a happy resolution of the situation, while those two unnamed guys both sob at what's happening and resolve themselves to go and connect with their parents, one of whom with all 7 of his stepdads, which I can't tell if that means his parents are in a polyamorous relationship, or if his, one of his parents has just had a bunch of stepdads and he just keeps contact with all of them. What's your story, my guy? I want to know his story. Give it to me. Show that hasn't aired in 9 years. The episode ends with a family dinner, and everybody happy and together, with a toast to that concept. And that's it. Well, that's it except for a little joke where the indefatigable Uncle Cheech hits on his own brother because he doesn't know that she is transgender, only to respond when he finds out that he considers such a thing a maybe.
Cheech, you're hitting on your own brother.
I'll take that as a maybe.
Cheech, you fucking sex freak, you. Look, the joke here, I think, is very clearly on Cheech and nobody else, so still ending in a pretty good place. Now with the episode detailed and discussed in depth, we have to do the real work of considering what this means, and whether this is in fact good trans representation or bad. I want to firstly get this out of the way because it has become a common comment for me in the past. It's always the first thing I check just to make sure, and that is that I don't know exactly who voiced Sally Monero. It's definitely a more masculine voice, and everything I can find makes it seem as if Tony Nappo, the voice actor for Jimmy Falcone, also voiced his transgender father, and nothing else seems to contradict that statement. So this is not a case of them getting in a transgender voice actor or actor to do this, which would have been a big plus in their camp for that. We consistently mention here on the channel the difficulty with which transgender people find it to break into the acting industry, and having roles that should be a guaranteed look-in for them taken away or done by cisgender people does do the work in closing those doors or making it harder. But this isn't a definitive, you must do this or you have failed the trans representation kind of situation. The rest of the episode does have a lot of positive moments. I would say that the overarching attitude towards Sally Manero and towards her transgender identity is handled in a way that is far surpassing many of Fugget About It's contemporaries at the time, giving her a voice of her own in the proceedings, never making her transness to be the issue of the episode or to be a point of mockery for who she is, making it clear the difficulty that transgender people can face with unaccepting environments and organisations, which can lead to them having to cut ties and start a new life completely, while not making it into a special episode that ruins the overall comedic tone of the piece. While there is some misgendering that does go by unrecognised or uncorrected, which isn't a great thing, for the most part they do their best to try and gender Sally Manero correctly. And it certainly doesn't go into any detail on the whole trans thing, which could be seen as a boon as much as a detriment. You see, while it is good to really cover trans themes or trans problems to educate cis people, it's also just as useful and valid to have trans people exist without the trans pain or trans difficulty becoming the dominant way in which cis audiences see us. Trans people are more than just their struggle, are more than just a series of societal ills and targeting, and ending on a positive note is a good tactic to negate that overwhelming stereotyping from other shows, especially police procedurals that really do like casting trans characters as victims. Overall, I do think that Fugget About It manages to pull off some successful trans representation, and it is one that I would advocate anybody looking back for inspiration to check out over other cartoon shows of the same time period. While it's certainly not perfect, it does represent a good stepping stone in the past of animation that stands out from the rest of the pack for at least not being painful to watch or something that you would need to turn off halfway through because it makes you physically queasy to see. Unfortunately, I can't really review how this develops over time, or how the creators progressed with this, because the show really did truly die 10 years ago, and never made it out of the graveyard like some others did. Art is a cruel world, and not everything makes it. So this does exist as truly a single case amidst the series. Which is sad, because I would have liked to see what else they could do with it, given the advancement of more LGBTQ themes into the mainstream post its vanishing from the airways. Apart from all of that, big thumbs up from me on this one. Fugget About It, it did good. Good on Fugget About It, and I hope it gets revived by Netflix. I don't know, they might do it. So that's the Fugget About It trans episode. And hopefully you enjoyed this foray into a moderately obscure show from the distant past. If you did, and would like to see more like this, well, there's tons of videos on my channel that do very similar things, you can go watch those as well. Otherwise, the best way to do that is by putting on your strongest New York accent and heading into the comment section to drop some stereotypical phrase from a movie or show. Like, I'm walking over here, or, hey, what's the big idea, or, something to that effect. You can also, while you're down there, like, share and subscribe, which do all the things that, they do all the things that they kind of make clear that they do in the word that they are. If you like something, it means you like it. If you share something, it means you're sharing it with people. If you subscribe, it means that you're subscribing. Do I need to explain these? If you really, really like what I've done here and want to make sure that I'm able to financially continue doing it, then the best way to pull that off is by going to my Patreon and subscribing there. I basically never get sponsors for any of my videos, so in effect everybody there is the closest thing, and it does allow me to have food, electricity, and the internet, all of which are the tools that I use to make these videos, and without which I'll have to stop making the videos. I've got a ton of content planned for the rest of this year, and so I'd love to keep being able to make this stuff. All the people flying past the screen right now are those in the $5 and up category on my Patreon, who I massively appreciate, along with anybody else on there, for contributing to, making sure that I get paid for doing this stuff. They're all really helping to make sure that those videos do in fact get made, and to keep me motivated and on track. Other than all of that, thank you for watching this video, and I hope you have a great day.